I was in, traditional like public market investing for 7 years. So like I know what like normal disclosure standards are. And then being involved with Jito for like 3 years, you kind of see just like teams often don't have the right incentives. And, I think at Jito, we've tried to do the right thing as much as we can, and not like cheerlead ourselves or anything like that, but just kind of trying to lead by example, but to create some sort of more system that rewards people, that, and also just like talking to public market investors, it's really confusing for them to find any of this information. If you've like ever looked at a token yourself, it's like a day to find this basic information, and now you can find it in 5 minutes with your platform. And so changing project incentives and making crypto more accessible to people that want to invest in high quality projects is something that we really need.
What's up, guys? Just wanted to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Aptos. We'll hear more about how Bitcoin, DeFi, and Aptos is heating up later today. But for now, let's get into the episode. Nothing said on 0x Research is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our opinions, not financial advice. Boccaccio, Ryan, and our guests may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed.
All right, guys. We're here live, chilling in the house. I can't believe they let this man out of the cages today. Coming back to you, 0x Research Live, joined by Boccaccio. That hairline is looking absolutely fresh today. And Carlos from the research team. How you guys doing?
Good. How's my hairline looking?
It looks pretty good, man. The headphones really accentuate.
Thank you, man.
You and Ryan Connor really holding up that side of the floor for sure.
Let's skip this part. Let's get.
We can't cut when it's live, Bog. We just go. How are we feeling? Next week's Permissionless. I'm excited actually to see most of the team there. I'm excited to see hopefully some of our more enthusiastic Telegram community members come out to Permissionless. We'll have the dunk tank. I think we're going to have a little arcade basketball game. We're going to have some stuff at the OX Arena. Like, it should be a good time.
We keep talking about these, but I feel like we don't really know if they're happening.
The dunk tank's happening.
No, the dunk tank's happening, but I don't know the size of the dunk tank. It could be fucking massive. It could be tiny. I don't know the arcade system.
You think you won't fit? You think you won't fit in there?
Big guy, what if I show up there? They're like, no, actually, sir, you can't get in this one. The sizing doesn't work. The girth. They're like, no, you can't be in here.
Yeah, Bob's talking about girth of the dunk tank.
What's up, Daniel?
I'm sorry, what did I just join?
We got Dan Reverend Smith back on. Glad to have him back. We've been needing his presence. Talking about Permissionless, excited to see there. What are you excited for, Mr. Reverend?
What am I excited for? Seeing the team in person. That gets me fired up. We work pretty remote. We have an office in New York, obviously, but everybody's kind of spread out across the U.S. and Europe. So it's always a pleasure getting to get everybody in the same room, man. So maybe it's a selfish answer because
well, it's not a selfish answer. It's just kind of a bait answer. It's like saying, "Oh, I love the team. I just want to see the team. Give me specifics."
To be fair, I have the same corny answer in interviews because it's true, right? Like, why do I love Blockworks? Like, the answer is the people. I think I have a more detailed and interesting answer to why it's the people. But this company is awesome. The talent density, the number of high agency people here, I've never seen anything like it. I came from like the big four accounting world where you are truly a cog in the machine. So maybe that's why I'm so excited to work at a high-paced startup.
That's a nice sentiment to have. Carlos, why are you excited, man?
I would just second Dan's answer.
No.
Yeah. I don't know. What are you excited about, Bach?
I'm excited for Jacob Sharple's talks on DEX activity across the industry and Westy's talk around how you can distill active addresses into a useful metric.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie.
You don't care about either. I know. Guy who hates numbers. Neither of them involved Hyperliquid.
No Hyperliquid talk. No, but the thing is, I think it'll be interesting. First of all, I'm excited to see Jacob talk because I've never actually seen Jacob talk. This might come as a surprise to the viewers, but Daniel Smith does not let me talk to the data guys because every time it used to be about hyperliquid data, and then now that we have it, they won't let me chat to them anymore. I'm also excited to see Westy, but only because I don't really understand how Westy is built. Like I've only seen him in this format, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, like how he exists. And I'm excited to see how it works out.
Dude's built like a Mack truck.
Dude, I'm kind of worried because he's like at the gym all day, plus doing like 10, 15K races all the time. That's irrelevant. Danny, please can you bring us back to relevant topics?
Yeah, well, I guess I want to say why I'm excited. I think the people is one. This will be my first crypto conference, so excited for that. Excited that it's permissionless, and excited there'll be a dunk tank there. But yeah, I think on the people side, I've never met any of you in person, so it should be fun for that reason alone, regardless of the corporate versus startup culture maybe that was referenced. But I do think that's an interesting piece of it as well. I would agree with Dan coming from a more corporate job in a prior life as well. There's something different about it for sure in the culture. Let's. David says he's excited to outdrink me and Bach with Daniel.
Are we doing that on the live stream? That could be fun.
Yeah, it could be.
That'd be insane.
One of us says something wrong, and then
somebody dies live from alcohol poisoning. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about markets. There's actually a lot of stuff going on this week. I feel like last week we kind of struggled with some topics. It was, the same old. Everyone was talking about stablecoins, but there really wasn't that much to speak about, if I'm being quite honest. This week, I feel like there's been a lot more happening. And maybe, Dan, it might be good to start with... No, we'll save it for later. Let's let the viewers trickle in, and we'll talk about token transparency later. We'll get to that one. We'll tease it up a little bit. Another topic of yours that I want to get into, though, is about CEXs getting on chain. I talked a little bit with this with Bach and Ryan on the recent roundtable, but they weren't as passionate about this idea as I think you are. But I do want to get into this because I think it's an interesting topic. It goes back to some of the conversations and like tweets and like ideas that have been circulating, like, quote, Gore tweet from a few months ago, Robinhood's just going to come on chain and like eat everybody's lunch or whatever. But we're kind of seeing this actually just within the industry, Coinbase coming on chain, Binance is like making a push back on chain with BNB chain, and now Bybit coming on chain. So yeah, if you want to, I can pull up your tweet, but I want you to talk through some of these ideas.
Yeah, shared screen. Okay, cool. Okay, so I was poking around with the idea of, if we look through history, we've had different exchanges come on chain in a different way over time. And if you just like intuitively think about it, it was sort of the exact opposite way you probably would guess, right? I think naturally my brain would go, okay, you start with the most lightweight way, and then you transition into trying to own the full stack. And we actually saw the exact opposite. So Binance was first. I think 2019 BNB chain launched. They were an L1 proof of authority. And really, I think the goal here was to own the full stack, but also create this like integrated ecosystem centered around the BNB token, right? So Binance has different products, and they like work hand in hand with the actual chain. So like their launchpad, right? You have to stake BNB as sort of like your entry ticket into being able to participate. Or Binance Alpha, they do interesting programs on the actual chain. So I think right now they're incentivizing volume on certain pairs on PancakeSwap. That's why you see these massive blowouts in BNB volume on chain. But yeah, that's kind of the point, right? I think like their motive here again was to create this vertically integrated ecosystem around this token. And then you see Coinbase. I think Base launched 2023. I feel confident saying maybe 24, but yeah, probably 2023. So they went the L2 route, right? So a little bit more lightweight, and obviously the base is built on Ethereum, and they're actually creating a revenue stream for the exchange here with the gross sequencer profit based on the activity that happens on Base. And then this one actually, I think the motive is in terms of product integration as well. So USDC, they're parking user deposits there. They can improve the I think they talked about the settlement times decrease rather than holding it on other chains. They actually probably feel a little bit more comfortable from a security standpoint holding it on Base. And even with the launch of CBBTC, their wrapped Bitcoin product, they've been really focused on catalyzing growth through deployments on Base. Or even like Morpho, right? Now they're offering Bitcoin-backed loans through Morpho on Base, right? So you see this like product line that's focused at improving the experience you get from either the exchange's products or directly through the exchange app, right? And even just the other day, they announced you can trade any asset that's deployed to an integrated DEX on Base. So again, all of that kind of goes to say that the chain exists to accelerate the roadmap or the product offering of the exchange, which is slightly different than what we saw with Binance, right? Again, that feels like they're trying to build this more robust ecosystem inclusive of both things simultaneously, whereas Coinbase seems to have the view, hey, all we're trying to do is accelerate the exchange's vision, and a chain gets us there. And then Bybit was the recent announcement, right? So instead of doing anything related to building their own tech stack, a chain or an L1, L2, they're just going to deploy smart contracts or programs on Solana. It's facilitated around being a DEX. So we don't really know what the value of the accrual here is yet. It's not deployed. I think it goes live on testnet at the end of the month. And presumably there'll be some trading fees there. But really this just says, okay, the core focus of our exchange is to list more assets and facilitate deep liquid trades, tight spreads. And they're like, okay, well, forget all the chain stuff. Let's just deploy programs on Solana. Again, so this is the most lightweight version of getting where they wanted to be, which is improving the single focus of the exchange, which is trading assets. So I just thought that was really interesting how you've seen this life cycle shift from really heavy to more lightweight. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Probably the reality is when Binance launched BNB chain, there really wasn't that ecosystem that would serve their vision. They really they really centered this thing around the token BNB. So you kind of needed the chain to make that happen. And then fast forward to the end of the spectrum with Bybit, they're like, okay, we think Solana's got a great scaling roadmap. They're high throughput. Tons of volumes happening there today. Why don't we just use that to partake in that ecosystem rather than trying to start from scratch, build the full stack? We've seen that take multi-years to get off the ground as well. So I'll pause there because I think the interesting thing why I was thinking about this was thinking about how large banks and fintechs are going to come on chain. So I was like, okay, well, CEXs are kind of like the crypto version of that in some regard. So let's kind of take a look at what they thought. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts about this. I think, my end takeaway was the battle moved up the stack, getting closer to the user over time, going from Binance's approach to Bybit's approach.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there was like maybe a realization that happened over the past few years where maybe all of these teams thought that like building a chain was the requirement to do this, like to get users and liquidity or what have you, whatever that thinking was. I mean, at the time that was the thing, right? Like you build a chain and then you get people to come there and trade and do whatever. But there's been a shift and I think a realization here that that's not necessary at all. You can just build an app on a pre-existing chain and drive volume there and earn a ton of revenue on trading fees and spreads and other things. And I think we've kind of slowly been seeing this shift. And I think one that you didn't mention, but seems like is pretty relevant as well as like OKX wallet has also been like making some similar moves here where, you start with a wallet and then like you build in like on-chain trading infra and like backend behind that. And, I think they're routing to some meaningful partners now like Phantom and maybe some others. So yeah, I mean, I think we've seen like this slow shift of realization that like building a chain or an L2 or what have you for like a high FTV token is maybe less meaningful than you can just go out and build a product that earns a ton of money right off the rip.
Yeah, Coinbase wallet too, right? Like they just want to be closer to the user. And so the L2 is kind of like this hybrid, right? It is fairly lightweight. They'd probably disagree. I think they have a pretty meaningful engineering team focused on the scaling side of that. But I think like the interesting point becomes it's like, okay, well, you think about like Bank of America, JP Morgan, they have all of the resources in the world to, launch their own chain, even Robinhood. Will they do that is the burning question. So like I'm pretty hard pressed to think Robinhood won't launch a chain. It just feels like the natural point, but maybe they look at what Bybit did and said, hey, that's a really lightweight to get off zero. And maybe that's the natural starting point and we'll take more layers in over time, just given the, they do already have the customer. They have their own Web2 front end that has done, they put thousands of hours in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours into work of building. So I don't know, man. Maybe I'm a little bit shifted here because JP Morgan certainly thinks they have the distribution network to build their own chain, right? They already have a chain, but it's like a private backend style chain, sort of like that enterprise blockchain thesis. That's called it was Onyx, now it's Kinexus.
It's still
but
on
I don't know the construct there. Is it maybe it's an Avalanche L1? But point being, they launched JPMD, this stable coin, and it's on base. And you would think that that'd probably be a great starting point for your own infrastructure, but they kind of went this more lightweight approach where they probably looked at Tether's income statement, most profitable company per employee in the world, and said, "Hey, we want some of that. We've got a lot of the surrounding infrastructure. All we need to do is issue this thing. Like that's the one piece that's missing for us. Like why not?" So I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting. I think I'm a little bit less certain that we'll see all of these guys go build chains. And I think a lot of them are going to think about like lightweight infrastructure, whether that's issuing stable coins or other tokens, other assets, or a series of smart contracts or programs.
Yeah. One thing to note here is that previously it was more beneficial to just launch your own chain though, because chains just got a massive bump in valuation. But now I think this is probably with pumped up fun. Like and Telegram bots, you realize that you can actually make a buttload of money without having to wait the 4-year vesting cycle and whatnot that you would used to have to wait. And you can just like make a buttload of money doing that. So now we're actually seeing more and more people focusing more and more on applications. I wonder if this is going to also impact how good VCs operate, because historically I feel like it's been kind of free lunch to just I don't know, give money to some dev who is building out a competitive L1 and then cash out using that because you get an AML. It has like a guaranteed floor of like whatever 500, 600. You get off on like a 60-70% discount. You're making money still. Versus now, I feel like it's shifted quite a bit in that a lot of VCs I assume can't even sell. They can't find buyers for their L1s. And probably like Alliance must have cleaned up, right? And I guess like VCs focused on apps as opposed to VCs who have historically been focused on L1s and infrastructure just because it was free money. Daniel, just FYI, your screen is just
What?
It's fine. Only we can see it.
we can see it, just like don't do weird stuff.
Let the
I was
audience
gonna say, making
know.
it sound like I'm doing something weird. I am tweeting the link to this live stream.
Last time you were moving weird on TikTok, searching up Coco Malone. So but yeah, I mean, incentives have shifted. People are making money on apps instead. We've really figured out that you can charge 3% for lottery tickets on volume and make a buttload of money. Sometimes up to like 8-9% if you count in priority fees and tips and whatnot. REV. So yeah.
I mean, I feel like we've discovered that you can take an extra fee for offering users a better UI, and then you can stack those up multiple times and the user doesn't care because they're happy to pay for it. I'll pump with a trading bot on top with a XYZ on top. Like, they don't care. Like they're just, they're not cost sensitive in this perspective. They want to use like the best product and they'll pay for it.
Yeah. Dan, do you know architecturally how the Bybit DEX will look like? Like traditional AMMs like Orca and Radium, like have an external piece and they rebalance the pools, and they historically haven't been able to provide as tight spreads as, let's say, prop AMMs like SolFi, ZeroFi, etc. Like, is Bybit more like this later cohort of AMMs, which has like a hybrid approach, like no external piece, like protocol on liquidity, like tightest spreads, like focusing on highly liquid markets?
Great question. There's no docs yet, so we don't really know, but I would personally be pretty shocked and maybe even a little bit disappointed if it wasn't the prop style AMMs. You come from Bybit's perspective, right? They already have great deep relationships with market makers, and that's what you need to control these Oracle price pools, basically. So I think you have the opportunity to do just that, right? You just need to onboard market makers and kind of get them integrated with the system and start competing that way. So yeah, I don't know. It's not public yet, but we will see it on testnet in 10 days. So we'll have a good indication then. But yeah, again, I'd just be pretty shocked if it wasn't that. It's kind of the evolution of these on-chain AMMs, where they're going. I think eventually you end up at order books, but Phoenix tried to do this, and the infrastructure is just not quite there yet. So these prop AMMs are kind of like a hybrid intermediary. You see how well SolFi, for example, is cleaning up on Jupiter retail flow, and that's a pretty good indication that that's probably the model to be using.
Yeah, and it's like the perfect setup, right? Because they can actively take advantage of the CEX DEX arbitrage, like just redirecting like DEX activity to their own exchange, right?
Yeah, so it'll definitely be interesting. I don't know. It could be more of like an RFQ system as well, sort of like Jupiter Z. I'm not too familiar with the docs there, so I don't know exactly what that looks like. But SolFi is like 1 degree different from an RFQ. I think in an RFQ system, you sort of need trust and able to get the right quote and then get that fill at that quote versus everything happening on chain like SolFi. It looks like an AMM. You're just being able to move the liquidity with an Oracle instead of a trade. So I don't know. I think I would, again, TLDR, I'd be a little bit upset if it wasn't that route. Or something new and innovative, to be fair. If it's just like a, Uni V2 fork, like, okay, what are we doing? Like, you could have made this a million times cooler.
Yeah, I mean, CEXs have been able to compete like recently. Like you mentioned, like OKX wallet and the OKX aggregator. Like it's been up on the DEX aggregator share since the beginning of May, basically. Like Jupiter had like, I'm checking like the chart from the dashboard. Jupiter had like almost 100% share of DEX aggregator volume, and today, like OKX has around 18% market share for the DEX aggregator volume on Solana.
Is the rest Jupiter? Is the rest Jupiter?
Jupiter is 75%, and then DFlow has around 6%.
Yeah. I wonder if a lot of that volume for OKX is coming from their like mobile app, because I've seen, it's like the 5th time I've talking about this, but I've seen this increasingly like new user base for crypto, which is just people with Phantom on their phone who are just like raw swapping using that, versus I feel like, well, a lot of us, I assume, use Telegram bots mainly, but apart from that, I imagine a lot of us are using like a desktop to interact with, like connect to wallet, the old traditional way, versus I think a lot of the newer people who are onboarded are typically focused on using mobile wallets. So I imagine how much of that aggregator volume for OKX wallet is specifically coming from people who download the app and just use it that way. OKX wallet's also supposedly really good. I think for a new entrant, it is probably really good because it shows all of your. I remember I fought with Ryan Connor about this because it shows all of your holdings in one page, and to me that seems like hell because I like my like Rabi separate, Sui wallet separate, Solana wallet is separate. Versus if I'm a new entrant, I probably want everything on one page, and probably I only own Solana. So
Bitcoin DeFi is heating up on Aptos. With nearly 400 million BTC assets on chain, Aptos users can now earn yield on their Bitcoin via Eco aBTC and OKX xBTC without the typical bridge risks and high fees. To explore BTC yield opportunities on Aptos, follow the link in today's show notes.
As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But they also done something to the aggregator, because if you look at the share of trade routes on Kamino Swap, like they did something in May, and Kamino Swap has also been redirecting an increasing portion of trades through OKX since the beginning of May.
I don't really understand the Kamino bull case, Carlos. I'm gonna be honest with you. Can you explain it to me like I'm very, very stupid?
Well,
You're not a bull.
It's trading at the lowest price to sales amongst all money markets. And I think people are discounting the growth that it may experience with B2 that was released a month ago. Like B2 just embraces a modular architecture, sort of like Morpho and Euler. Like in less than 1 month, they've added like 12 new markets. They added 8 curated lending bolts, and they can tap now into like a diversified set of lenders and borrowers. So they added new avenues of growth, including like PT tokens from Exponent. That market already has like over 40 million in deposits, about 15 million in borrows. They've added private credit on the lending market. So they've onboarded a Maple market.
Oh, well, for like really dog shit assets right now, right? No disrespect to Kamino, just like the early iteration, the assets that like the private credit markets they have are not fantastic.
Isn't
So
that
the
every
private
piece of on-chain private credit though?
Yeah,
Like,
I
is
think
there-
that.
No.
Yeah, so
what
private
what
credit
is
today-
AAA private credit that's on-chain?
There isn't any. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. God, he's got so upset with me.
Yeah, so in summary, like private credit today on Kamino looks like basically it's Maple's syrup USDC. People are looping that against non-yield bearing stable coins, and then you also have ACREDs as ACRED, and people are also looping that against non-yield bearing stables. So yeah, in summary, I think like B2 can spark a growth flywheel for Kamino, and like they can scale aggressively. They also have like partner bolts, which I think is really interesting. So for instance, Fuse just enabled like a bolt where users can deposit like directly from Fuse wallet to Kamino. And so you don't even have to use Kamino's front end to deposit into the money market.
I think the left curve thesis is what's the meta trend happening? And it's stablecoins. So, okay, all these stablecoins come on chain. Some of them gradually become yield bearing. What gets interesting in that world? Then to me, it's lending markets. And then what's probably the more call option meta trend is like, okay, equity is coming on chain. Okay, well, what can you do with those when they're on chain? You're probably not going to be able to swap them through DEXs today. They're probably going to be transfer gated or transfer restricted, right? If you look at super states, they have like a treasury fund, and that's exactly how it operates. So like Aave and a couple other lending protocols are whitelisted, and you can whitelist your own addresses. So you can transfer back and forth, but other smart contracts are blacklisted because there's rules and regulations around how you can transfer those assets. And if that's the case, then basically the only thing that looks like it's going to be okay is lending markets. So I think in both of those trends, you see a bull case for lending markets. Solana has been at the center of a lot of activity this cycle. A lot of it's been more, let's call it like on-chain native or left curve activity like meme coins. And if you think there's going to be a maturation of the assets coming on chain, it's still an interesting place for that to happen. Superstate, for example, they announced their first equity, I think it was Soul Strategies, I want to say, and that's going to be coming on Solana. So maybe there's a pipeline there that gets interesting to consider. And so given that perspective, I think Kamino is pretty exciting because it's the premier money market on Solana. And the other thing I think that is interesting is they have a unlock coming. I think someone actually in the 0x Telegram flagged this unlock. But unlocks to me are only like scary or nerve-wracking for things that are wildly overvalued or overpriced, or things that have valuations that cannot be justified. This is the cheapest money market based on revenue multiples. So I think it's in a pretty safe spot for that to not really be a huge problem.
I feel like I feel like your left curve thesis was not the left curve thesis. I feel like the left curve thesis is what you said on the end, which is basically like Kamino is essentially like if you took Aave plus Morpho Euler on Solana. They don't really have, I think, like stiff competition quite yet. So they're kind of like the blend of all of those things, but on Solana, and then comp the TVL and the growth of stables, etc. on the chain. Maybe even
Yeah.
take the back half of that out. Like just say it's the Aave plus Morpho Euler of Solana, basically.
Yeah, crack team is still innovating, right? The V2 launch went pretty well. They onboarded Steakhouse and a few other well-known risk curators. So I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Disclosure,
They also have
I'm long Kamino.
no, one last thing. They also have like they aren't just a money market, right? They have like a full asset scaling suite now. So they have like the Kamino swap product. They have limit orders that can power efficiency in the money market. So they can plug Kamino swap into the multiply product. So users don't get like slippage when they swap for looping strategies. They have a spot leverage product. They also have like liquidity bolts for bootstrapping new assets. So I think it's not just like a money market. They also have like a ton of other products that can like uh, help them scale assets aggressively. One last thing I will say is that I think like one reason it may trade at a low multiple is that there's no clarity around value accrual for Kamino today. So if you look at the Kamino token today, it's not used for governance. It doesn't have any value accrual like from buybacks or whatever. So I just think it's part of like that lemon market thesis that Felipe from Thea is talking about, where people are discounting Kamino because they are like people are just not sure like what's the use of the token, right? So I think like if the team can add some clarity to that and align protocol growth with the token, like over the coming like months, I think we would see repricing for sure.
Yeah, Ryan said in chat by the lack of clarity. I think it's a good point. What I guess maybe the follow-up question to that would be like, let's say that's your idea. How much time do you give them to provide that clarity versus the rest of the market?
I think they should do it as soon as possible, right? Like, I don't know their jurisdictions, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, nor will I pretend to be one, but it seems like the regime is quite favorable. I don't know about their like equity token relationship, but that's something that they can do through Daniel Smith's token transparency program. In
That
addition,
segue, beautifully done.
very good stuff. Yeah, I think like the time is now, right? Like if I imagine there's quite a few people in their circle or their advisors or their VCs or team members who are telling them like this needs to probably be fixed or it needs to be disclosed such that uncertainty is, I think, a lot worse than, because people can price even if you have like a weird token equity relationship, people can price that, but people can't price uncertainty, and that makes it a difficult thing. So I think overall, I don't think you can go lower than having the lowest multiple. Well, you can, but I hope not. So I think uncertainty is probably worse there than
Can't go below 0. It's true. But no, I agree. The thing that really bothered me recently in these discussions was like, oh, they need to do a buyback or a dividend style distribution because they need to like prove that something's there. I'm like, that is such an expensive way to prove that you aren't rugging the token. That was actually what kind of kickstarted a lot of the idea behind the token transparency stuff. I'm like, there's just no way to just tell people you're not doing this. But yeah, I don't know, because I agree. Like, obviously you want to prove it, but forking over hard-earned cash is a very expensive way to do that. That's in some cases negative EV to do.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with Dan. Like I'm not advocating for like a buyback at this stage, like in their growth cycle. I'm just advocating for more clarity around like aligning protocol growth with the token itself. Like, but I agree, it's hard to do that, right? I think, yeah, that taps into the token transparency stuff.
So they don't have any confirmed, like there's no public details about like where revenues flow in terms of like the labs versus like the token per se. That's fully up in the air.
I think it flows to the DAO, right? But there's no yeah, it flows to the DAO. I just think there's no clarity around what Kamino's utilities looks like, right? Beyond like seasonal staking boost today.
That's fair. Well, I do think that was a good segue, Dan. We should talk about token transparency then. It sounds like Kamino might be a great partner there to get signed up. You talked a little bit about the vision. I think we should just dive into it a little bit. I know we have some like the first cohort. We've got some details from them. Like, I don't know. Talk us through the initial vision, what we're looking at right now, and like, I think people should realize that this is not like a final version. This is like a V1, maybe even like a V0. It's going to need some improvement and some adjustment and some feedback, but we're working towards that future state. So I'd love for you to dive into it. Like, let's talk token transparency. What do we need? What do tokens need?
Yeah, appreciate the intro there, and 100% strong agree that this is our first iteration. I would love to think we were capable of hitting a home run on day one, but the reality was we knew we wanted to get this to market in a way we were happy to present it, hear community feedback, and continue to iterate. This thing's going to be evolving in real time. It's only useful if the collective industry finds it's useful, or else we've kind of failed at building a framework that pulls out the important information to the market. So broadly, the idea was to just give these projects a tool to communicate an essential set of information about themselves, what they're doing, the operation, the entity structure to the market, because previously that didn't exist. And that's not inherently a bad thing that there isn't a disclosure regime today, but what it does is basically create an opportunity for bad actors to come into space and profit off of ambiguity. If nobody is ever asking you to answer this question, you don't have to answer it. And again, you can do sleazy things behind everyone's back, which leads to down-only tokens, retail getting hurt, the industry looking bad, and a lack of growth, right? If you talk to a lot of liquid funds today, they'll tell you that like raising their last fund was incredibly challenging. I think a lot of this has to do with, look, if you have two tokens, if you have a token and two businesses, one's a token, one's an equity, I think Felipe laid this out beautifully. The discount rate you have to apply to the token today is much higher, leading to a lower valuation because of all the risk you're taking on, because TradFi has very well-constructed markets that you're not going to get scammed. Or you don't know this, but you can be very confident and you have the tools to do sufficient due diligence to have, again, strong confidence you're not going to be scammed. We even have like our own word for getting scammed and being rugged. So I think if you haven't listened to Felipe's talk on lemon markets that he did at DBA's Research Day, I strongly recommend that for getting a deep sense of what the actual problem statement is. But yeah, we launched a token transparency framework earlier this week on Wednesday. I am overwhelmed with the feedback we've got in only just 2 days. Everybody was extremely excited about it. Jason Nianowitz, co-founder of Blockworks, tweeted out something to the effect of, we're launching something next week. Half the industry is going to hate us. Half the industry is going to love us. And that 50-50 split was honestly something I was like, yep, that's probably going to end up being right. And the response was overwhelmingly supportive, like 99-1, which I think really just goes to tell you how big of a problem everybody acknowledges this is. And so we were really excited to kind of put our hat in the ring and propose a solution. So the way the framework's constructed is there's 4 categories with a set total of 18 criteria. They cover project and team, the token supply and allocation, the market structure, and financial disclosure. And we work with teams to actually fill this out. So they're submitting the actual form itself. And then we do an audit round on that to make sure everything's kind of like in line with what we'd expect a response to be. And then we publish that for everybody to view. The framework itself is open source. So you can go to blockworks.co/token transparency and click the template of the framework that we have available for everyone to check out. You can also please reach out. We are setting up a streamlined submission form, so we don't have that live today. But if you are a project, please reach out to myself, Ryan Connor, Jason, Mike, anybody at Blockworks, and you can get us in touch with us to get the submission in. The goal is to have everybody submitted. We want every token project to have completed this. I think it's just the right step forward for us as an industry. What I was probably most happy about, most satisfied with, was when we started reaching out to projects that we kind of like knew the founders of or had great relationships with from just working in the industry. They were overwhelmingly excited to be a part of this, because when somebody does something bad, it has this negative impact on everybody in the market. And so the people doing things the right way, that spend tens and tens of hours, hundreds of hours, ensuring they're doing things the right way by hiring the right people, etc. It sucks when you get kind of stained with some bad actors' actions when you're doing things the right way. And so that was the overwhelming surprise, right? And we've already had people like, a couple of the large centralized exchanges reach out for like, how can we integrate these into our products so that our users can see the transparency score? Large companies that show price for tokens across the industry are excited as well. I think market makers are going to be excited about this as well, right? They don't want that to be working with bad actors either. And now they have an easier tool to ensure that. So it looks like we just got Brian from Jito in, and Jito is, of course, in the first cohort. So Brian, it was a pleasure to have you go through this experience. I think it's I have an enormous amount of respect for the teams in the first cohort because there's no precedent to doing this. And so you had to kind of be willing to do this out of your own goodwill for the industry, acknowledging it's a problem and wanting to kind of produce that credible signal to the market that says, hey, we're doing things the right way. So first of all, thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you guys for putting so much effort into this. That I know it was a lot, but I mean, it's something I personally feel very passionate about. Like I was in, traditional like public market investing for 7 years. So like I know what like normal disclosure standards are. And then being involved with Jito for like 3 years, you kind of see just like teams often don't have the right incentives. And, I think at Jito, we've tried to do the right thing as much as we can and not like cheerlead ourselves or anything like that, but just kind of trying to lead by example, but to create some sort of more system that, rewards people that, and also just like talking to public market investors, it's really confusing for them to find any of this information. If you've like ever looked at a token yourself, it's like a day to find this basic information. And now you can find it in 5 minutes with your platform. And so changing project incentives and making crypto more accessible to people that want to invest in high quality projects is something that we really need.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Right, that was the big challenge. It's like for a lot of these things, you could find them, but it took hours of work, and every single project did it differently. Some were in the forums, some were in the docs, some were on a website you've never heard of, some were in Telegram, some were in Discord, and it was like, okay, there's no central repository for all of this essential information that, to your point, is like critical to making a decision about this token. So not only for professional investors, right? I think there was a bit of an asymmetric angle here, right? Professional investors can generally get the founders or key members on the phone and get these questions answered, but average Joe cannot. And so that was also the other thing that we really wanted to level the playing field and bring the essential information that you should be disclosing to the forefront. So yeah, I 100% agree there. And again, just glad to have people excited about it and just generally overjoyed with the reaction that crypto Twitter had. It's not too often that 0x balloon lover will say something positive about Blockworks. So that was a huge win.
Yeah, I think that's a big win. I guess, Dan, you kind of went through the framework generally, and obviously, mentioned Jito's one within that first cohort. And I know, Brian, you guys have also been making your own attempts at headway with the regulatory agencies just in the conversations around tokens. So, but I guess maybe what we should frame up as a question here is like, we know this is V0 or V1. Like, what are other things that you're thinking of or that came to mind from your end or from Jito's end as you went through this? Like, wow, this is great, but like, maybe that we should also be including this information or that information. What's that like future look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great V1, proof of concept, and there's a lot of wood to chop. And it sounds like you guys have had a flood of inbound from other projects teams, which is awesome. I've been like shilling it to a bunch of projects and teams I like, and like, hey, get involved because like it needs to be standardized and mainstream for it actually to work. I think the biggest thing that is on my wish list, and it couldn't have been included in the first batch because it's a very hard problem to solve, but is around insider token sales. And that's something that we see, egregious examples of, or at least rumors of in the crypto space, and we like never have any idea if it's true or not. And you can't just like be like, oh, this is founder A's wallet, and like have an alert set up on SoulScan that like tells you or something when it happens, because like people need to protect their individual privacy. But if there is a way to aggregate all of the addresses, not only team members, but investors, as well as any other insiders, like foundations even, and then have like a monthly report spit out about transactions there, then I think that is really critical information. And so it's a hard problem, but like that, as an investor would love to be able to understand, like, is the founder dumping on me? And that's a key piece of information.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. I think there's a couple of key areas we can improve on over time. So of course the criteria. I think there's some tweaking to be done, consistency across the auditing side of things as well. Another one is who fills us out. Right now, it's like we kind of just went to the key members of the protocols and teams that we were building with, and we're like, here's what we want to do, and then they would kind of just figure it out on their end. But there's probably some standardization we should do there around who can actually complete these, especially in the context of something like a truly decentralized DAO. Maybe there's somebody with X amount of voting power is only eligible to actually complete this on behalf of the project. So there's like a million different directions you can go with the who. The other one is when. So how often? Right now we have this kind of structured as a one-time filing, and we're definitely taking in updates from teams, especially in the first cohort. Like, again, we probably didn't get this perfect. If you didn't get it perfect, that's just the realities of this being the first time it's ever been done. But Hester Peirce mentioned in her Safe Harbor 2.0 a like rolling submission window of semi-annual or every 6 months. So that could be an interesting thing to layer on in the future. The way I've been kind of talking about this is the industry on a scale of 0 to 10 for its disclosure ability is at about a -2 right now. And the V1 probably got us to a 3 or a 4. Right. And so it's like, is that the end state? Absolutely not. But getting above 0, I think, was the most important thing we can do as an industry. And there's going to be baby steps of layering on and like incremental pain for the teams going through this to like actually complete the work. Right. If, we get into this insider transaction idea, like, OK, someone's going to have to produce these reports. And I think the needle we really needed to thread on V1 was producing meaningful utility to the market. Right. So getting the right information out without overburdening these teams, because in a lot of cases, token projects go to market with less than 10 people on the team, right? And you can't put like full gap accounting, full gap reporting, all of the TradFi disclosure regime built by the SEC onto these teams. It just won't happen. So it's like, okay, how can we figure out what the right balance between those two things are? I think we probably erred on the side of like simplicity, again, just for V1, getting this thing to market. And so layering in these extra pieces, these extra criteria, hardening up the amount of information we're actually requesting, tightening down the scores to actually make sure we're getting there. There's a million different levers we can pull. So over the last 2 days, we've been sprinting through like an internal review of, okay, we got 5 in. Let's digest this. What were our key learnings? Let's make some small iterations before we go in and take in the next cohort. So that's kind of the goal. But we did get an enormous amount of inbound, as you flagged, and that's just, again, a huge testament to how important people are actually treating this. And I just can't, again, I cannot be more overjoyed.
Yeah, I think another area this is actually going to be really cool is if we have it for tokens that are launching imminently, right?
Yes.
New tokens have like no track record. It's really hard. And so having some sort of uniform standard, say there's like 10 tokens or something launching this week, and you can just filter through of like, okay, are these guys actually like giving revenue to the DAO? Are they, where like the token's sitting, like all of this stuff is a really interesting way to filter out new launches. Because if a token's been around for a while, like maybe you have some track record of like how the team has behaved and all that stuff, but like the uncertainty on new tokens is so high that I think this is really, really valuable, right? In equity markets, you have like S1s and there are hundreds and hundreds of pages, and here, like, at least you have some modicum of information to like, this is worth investing in.
100%, completely agree. Yeah, that's the idea for this, but of course we have to go retroactive since nothing has existed and we have so many tokens. But completely agree. There's a lot of new launches on the horizon too, so I think we have some good opportunities at some integration partners there as well. But yeah, shoot, I had another thing I wanted to mention on that, but I'm blanking.
I was going to say, like, I feel like that's one where the timeline or the market itself, the industry has kind of been asking for more clarity and more detail. You've seen with certain token launches in the recent like few quarters where conversation sparks up like, oh, they gave X% of supply to the exchange that they listed on, and there's a certain amount that's an airdrop, but this is all kind of like rumors from people who maybe have a connection to an insider, and so you just see it on the timeline and you're like, is that true? Are they dumping on me on day one, or are they locked up investing? Like, I think the regular person again has no idea what's happening here. You're just kind of like maybe taking the word of someone who is maybe 2-3 steps like down the rung of a connection to somebody who knows somebody at a protocol. But yeah, I mean, totally agree. That's another big piece. Newly launching tokens having a lot more clarity around what all of that structure looks like before they come to market.
Yeah, Danny, I think that's a great point. I think a success metric for us internally is, do we see when a new token is launching, if they've completed this, do we see people arguing about what was said in this standardized form instead of like screenshotting something from Discord and like from a year ago, right? That would be a huge win for us, because now everyone has the information and then the market can decide for itself what's good and what's bad. And that was ultimately the goal. What we wanted to do was push this information into the market and not, to the best of our ability, not have an opinion about like, is this the right or wrong way to do something? So like, for example, the relationship between the equity and the token is a very contentious debate right now, but we don't know what the best solution is like. So we don't want to say like, are you using this structure? Because we don't know what the right structure is. So we just kind of give an opportunity to describe the structure and the relationship between these two things, instead of saying like being opinionated about what you need to look like. If you're curious to read more about that, like Miles Jennings from A16Z wrote a really interesting piece. I think it was titled "The End of the Foundation Era" or something along that regard, talking about Borgs and Dunas. And then Jake Travinsky had some really good thoughts. We did a roundtable on a Blockworks roundtable on that with Felipe as well. Actually, we gave some alpha in there for the listeners, and we kind of announced the token transparency quietly a couple days early in that roundtable. But Jake Travinsky had some kind of an interesting remarks around why foundations are actually a very good structure, and it's just like people just abused how they were structured, and that's kind of possible to do in many structures. So I don't know. It's I would encourage that one as well. But yeah, I think that's just kind of a good example for how we just want to push information into the market and let the market decide good versus bad.
Awesome. Well, Brian, appreciate having you on. I know you have a time crunch. Glad you could come on and talk, token transparency with us. Glad you were in that first, you guys and Jito were in that first cohort. And I'm expecting that, we'll continue refining what that looks like alongside you guys into the future.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really bullish on this. If any teams want to talk to me about our experience going through it, or however else I can be helpful to this, just anyone reach out to me, and I'll hook you up with what our experience was. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks, Brian.
Ooh. My bad.
Good setup.
I don't know. There we go. That's the one we
With nearly 400 million BTC on chain, supported by a secure, fast, and affordable Move VM environment, Aptos has become the BTCFi growth chain. Aptos users can now earn yield on their Bitcoin via Eco's aBTC and OKX's xBTC without the typical bridge risks and high fees. With support from Echo, OKX, and Stacks' SBTC, Aptos is the place to go for best-in-class yield on Bitcoin. To explore BTC yield opportunities on Aptos, follow the link in today's show notes.
As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research.
I don't want to waste Brian's time, which is why I didn't speak. But Dan, I kind of want to harp on that thing that you talked about, which is that VCs and liquid funds typically have access to this information at will anyway. At least from like good projects, which is the list that we did currently. So I think this is like kind of really for the general. It's for like even us. I think because we're with Blockworks, we can you can message somebody on Twitter and say, hey, can you give me some information about XYZ? But I think the general populace does not have access to this information.
Well, and even if they do, like, it's a bit of a good boys club, right? You know what I mean? Like if especially if you think that, more institutions or new teams are going to enter this space, it's not going to be appealing to them if, they walk in and it's like, yeah, these 4 or 5 VCs, like they know everything about every token, but otherwise you're kind of locked out unless you have that connection. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just like broadly a win. Like democratization of the information is just a win.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure not all VCs have access and funds have access.
Ryan Connor disagreeing with you in the comments.
Fuck this guy. He said, "Fuck this guy" to me.
I mean that. Okay, so I don't know where Ryan's going with this at all, but okay. So one interesting thing that's definitely true is think about, okay, if you're a VC and you are curious about someone like a project you weren't invested in, sure, you can like back channel and get to that founder eventually, but you have like there is still that access of like bringing this information to light. And I think having teams answer these questions in this public format is just net positive for kind of like giving that standardization in that view. So maybe that's where Kranken was going with it. I'm not entirely sure, but we've got him on the
He's here
stream
to yell at me.
with a
Got him on to
beautiful
get his take.
background too. Look at this.
That's all right.
This guy's chilling at the house.
How you guys doing?
Hey, Ryan.
It's been a while. I haven't seen you guys in so long. It's just been like me and Dan chatting on token transparency stuff.
We had a call this morning.
Shit, you're right.
Carlos was on it.
I mean, like we haven't like properly hung out, and now I feel like we can.
Yeah.
Next week, baby.
That's what Fridays are for.
Yeah.
And permissionless.
Yeah.
Dan, ask him your question because I don't know what it was, but you're saying he was going somewhere with something.
When you said no, they don't, what were you referring to? Like, is professional investors still having access to this information? Was that?
Yeah, Fox said that VCs have access to this information, and I think the blanket statement is not true. Just think of the most recent rounds that we've heard about and chatting with VCs, and they all kind of have a different understanding of the situation. And there's like not all VCs are created equal. It's not just a homogenous blob. I would assume that some exert leverage and others cannot to get information that they want. Especially when markets get really hot, right? Like if it's a 2021 market, the founder's saying like, you need to just commit to the round because I don't have the time to like send you the deck. And, the VC could be left in the dust. So, yeah, I don't think it's, a lot of people have been like, a lot of the comments on token transparency is like, oh, now we're like fighting back against the VCs. And like, I don't know. I just think the blanket statement on like evil VCs is never something I've agreed with. You guys know this.
Yeah. Ryan Connor said it's easy
VC
to hate.
apologist.
It's easy to hate the rich, but do you have the courage to hate the poor? It's very powerful. I think probably the only people who consistently have this data is centralized exchanges, right? Or like at least some form of this data in some way. To me, I don't want to make this whole token transparency live stream, but to me, that feels like I should probably do this in private with you, Daniel, to be honest with you. But to me, it feels like that's the natural fit to do like some form of distribution to them. So I don't know, go to a CEX and say, hey, look, like add this into your listings process so that we can automatically get it. Bish, bash, bosh.
No, I think you're 100% right. That's something we're really excited about. If there's any exchanges listening to the stream, we'd be happy to chat on this. I mean, look, part in the announcement blog post I wrote, one of the points was like, if this isn't useful for a centralized exchange in the listings process, then we've missed. And like, we need to reconsider the questions we're asking, how we're delivering it. Like, we need to figure out why it's not and solve that, because it should be. I think it should help retail people and investors significantly, and centralized exchanges largely act as a filter there, right? I think a lot of people with the least amount of knowledge that are in the space probably I'm trying to make a serious comment, and Ryan Connor's throwing different backgrounds on me. I think centralized exchanges act as this filtering mechanism, right? And so if we can make their lives easier on getting legitimate assets that have teams building actual products behind them onto the exchange, and I think that's a huge win. So 100% thinking in the same line.
Yeah, if only I was included into this process, maybe I could have given this information a lot. It's fine. I'm not unhappy.
Yeah, I do think there's value there though as well, like having a body that's outside of them, because naturally exchanges are only going to get the information from the tokens that they're thinking about or planning to list on their exchange. So, that's not the entire universe of tokens. So, at Blockworks, just from the interest of the data itself, like there is something of a natural fit there to just gather information for any relevant token in the market that investors or researchers or developers might want to know about. So I think that makes sense. The other benefit I could see there as well is just having this confirmatory, like, the teams are saying these are the details, maybe exchanges and maybe other parties as well are also confirming, like, yes, these are some of the details that we've been provided as well. Like you can get a couple of potential handshakes in that process as well through having those connections. Whereas, I mean, we've talked about the example right now where it's just kind of like somebody posts a Telegram chat and then like another person confirms or denies it on Twitter, but there's no, true, there's no like pure truth to any of it. You're just kind of going on hearsay.
That's the negative too.
It's extremely unprofessional to just like say in a Discord, "Hey, we declare this as well." Like, and I think that's pretty objective. And like, if you want massive capital allocators to come into the space and provide capital so that teams can build cool things, you'll want the medium of communication to move away from those traditional channels.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And yeah, that's also why we've just been so excited about it, is that hasn't existed. That tool did not exist prior to this. And now teams have a way to actually do this. So yeah, I think it's just I think Jason might have said this on the roundup that went live today, but it was something to the effect of like 2025 is the year the industry matures and grows up. And there'll be kind of that line in the sand between the two worlds, if you will. Which is kind of also interesting in the context of like that, plus the largest on-chain activity this cycle was meme coins. I don't know. I think like the barbell is very real and very legitimate, very real things happening. And then just the on-chain nonsense is at all-time highs as well.
Yeah. But I feel like meme coins really, really took off partially as a response to people getting assaulted on what I will call VC coins and Ryan will get upset about. Like it was the fact that there weren't clear disclosures. There was clear like secondary sales that were not being documented properly and not being explained. And we didn't really know where everything, like what was happening in the back end, which is so partially probably like apart from the whole gambling, people like gambling thesis. I feel like partially, at least it was like touted as like meme coins are like, why buy a meme coin instead? Why buy like some insider fest VC coin while you can just like unpump everything is clearly seen, like it's just a meme coin, there's no expectations, whatever. So kind of a tie in there if you're interested, Daniel.
I think that was probably part of it. Like I don't know.
Ryan, what are you gonna say? Just say it and then mute yourself.
I hate that take. I hate that take that they're like we got upset with the VC coin, so therefore we all went to the.
No, well, the thing,
it's just not true.
I very clearly said it's only.
No one said I lost a bunch of money on TIA. Now I want to go and trade meme coins.
No, but that's not what I said at all. You didn't listen to me at all. You made up a narrative and then got upset about it. What I said is that it was pushed as something of that sort. It was pushed at, like, we all know that meme coins also are quite insidery, but it was pushed as people saying, why buy TIA? Bernisky is just selling on your head. Look, meme coins are not like that. They're democratizing whatever. Just by that. This you can't. I'm not saying I agree with this take. I am saying that it was pushed this way.
I think people said that publicly, but I don't think that was anyone's. I don't think that anyone.
So you're agreeing. You're agreeing with the thing that
people have said this, but I don't think that it's true.
No. But my argument is that people have said this, so you're agreeing.
You're confirming his argument, Ryan. He's just saying.
Okay.
He's doing one of those.
While doing
people have said this. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, that's one for Bach.
I will say, like, I think the nugget of truth I agree with Ryan here that, like, I don't think people made a conscious decision like, oh, I got dumped by VC token, therefore I'm bidding with it. But I think but I'm going to agree with you, Bach, so let me finish, is that I think there's a nugget of truth that, like, at that point in time, and even still now, it's like you look around the available token universe and you go, yeah, I mean, basically all of these tokens are really just like narrative pump and dumps. So like I should just buy the thing that's going to, jump up the highest on the chart. And that is probably a meme coin. So I think that's really what it boils down to. People just wanted the highest volatility, highest beta thing, and they bid that.
And I think people just saw people make a lot of money on bonk and whip, and then Pump Fund made a very, and people had been doing it for 10 years, and then Pump made a very low friction way to do that game.
Yeah, but I think we're also like giving people more credit than we should probably. I think a lot of people probably did buy meme coins because they were like, wow, like they fell for that Twitter narrative of financial nihilism, and we should. What? It's true.
I don't know. Maybe the game is just like fun to play. I don't think it has to have this like grand mastermind puppeteer behind the scenes. Like people just wanted to gamble, and it was the new gamble meta.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is people probably a bunch of people bought TIA and staked it because of the narrative that you should buy and stake it for
that was a gamble
I
meta.
think that's worse. I think that's why I think they're equally bad. I hate this fucking lineup, by the way. This is the worst lineup for me to ever be.
3-on-1. All right, next topic.
That's funny.
Can we talk about Worldcoin?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you want to talk?
That they're in talks with Reddit to be integrated onto that platform, and Reddit's experiencing a huge AI problem right now.
Can they do that for Twitter too? So I don't get the same 4 replies to every tweet I ever tweet.
You're gonna give your eyeball data just so that you can post REV this week is up 32% on Solana.
I actually haven't tweeted that in a while. Let me hold on. Please hold.
Hold up, let me farm the followers real quick.
You know, like I'm gonna say this and Ryan Connor's gonna call me a fucking idiot, but if they ask me for my eyeball, I'm not doing it, and I don't think a lot of people are going to do it. But the reality is that everybody's going to fucking do it, and
50 million people have already done it.
yeah, I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it.
50 million people have already done it, and no one has possession over your eyeball other than you.
I
Is
disagree.
Is that
with-
true?
Yeah, it's not like it's in their database. It's encrypted, and the key is split, and it's
No, but he's
it's held
asking.
on your device so that you're the only one who has access.
Yeah, he's asking about the 50 million, and the 50 million is true, but a lot of it is like people.
No, I was
go-
asking about the privacy, but
Oh.
go off, King.
Can I go off? A lot of the 50 million is like people going to developing countries and emerging markets and saying, hey, I'll give you $40 for this eyeball scan, and then they get the $600 of airdrop that Worldcoin initially had. Just FYI. I'm not saying that this won't happen. I think the world is a hellscape, and it likely will happen, but I just want
I'm
to
bearish
say-
on the world, so I'm bullish on Worldcoin.
Yeah.
We've got
Well, yeah, I mean,
Optimist Ryan versus Pessimist Bach once again.
No, I
It's like,
think
yeah,
it's cool.
yeah. If you Bach, I mean, you hate the AI stuff, and this is a solution to that problem.
Wait, that makes me sound like I'm one of those people that's like, oh, like AI is using 15 gallons of water per query. I'm not one of those people. I use AI all day. I think it's fantastic.
You hate the slot.
I hate slop.
Yeah.
I despise slop. They've made Twitter fully slop now as well. It's like REV tweets, token transparency, Ryan Connor talking about pump fun. It's just pure slop. Let's go back to the basics, the old stuff. FXS curve, year in vaults. I want Fred's on these, the originals.
Forks.
Dude, don't take me back to Frax, man.
I
Westy forced me to read the governance forums and write summaries about those for months. Come on.
That was so funny.
Hey, they got on the sphere. It's a win.
Yeah.
No, I
they
think
paid for it.
Worldcoin's cool. I don't know if I would scan my eyeballs. I would say yes. I don't know if you put me in front of the orb if I could bring myself to do it. There might need to be like 2 beers right next to it, and then maybe I would do it.
Financial incentives.
You
Yeah,
do it for
$40.
$9.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if the financial incentive is not going to cut it, but 2 beers might. I don't know. I like, okay, look, if you've been to the airport recently, you realize that your face is getting scanned every 2 seconds. Your iPhone, every time you open it up. Apple, wasn't there some monstrous data breach for Google and Apple as well? Like, okay, that's just probably worse than scanning your eyeball. So I don't know. And I'm definitely not like a I know there's like a lot of tech that goes into the safety behind these things that I don't have a full grasp of, but I feel like my eyeball's already been scanned.
I think it's natural. Here's where I'll agree with Dan that like I think it's natural to be a skeptic about how they're handling the data, just given how large corps have handled customer data. Just, you know, and obviously the assumptions there were different. It's like, yeah, you're signing up for all these free apps, and the result is that, you know, you're just giving them all of your data for free to go ahead and use and, you know, build apps or build ads and, you know, run their marketing machines with. But and you know, maybe the ethos of this is totally different, but it, you know, it's a natural concern, I think. But that doesn't mean you have to be the 100,000th eyeball. You can still be the 3 billionth eyeball once you're convinced that, you know, it's meaningfully plus EV for being a human or something versus being an AI.
Yeah.
Ryan, what's your big take here, Ryan? I guess I'm curious where you wanted to go with this.
I think the incentives are just so strong from multiple directions to ingrain Worldcoin as first as a verification system, but then as perhaps a method of payment on the internet. That's a step 2 and further away. Can you guys hear that in the background?
Yeah. What's happening? Are you in a tornado?
Dude, are you in a hurricane?
Is it still bad?
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. So two big powerful incentives to implement Worldcoin. The first is if you think that slap is going to destroy internet experiences, where like, look, I'm looking for an apartment online, and all apartment photos now are doctored by AI to the point where I show up at the apartment and I do not trust what I'm getting into because they're so doctored and it's so hard to tell the difference. So if you think that slop is a problem, which I do admit it is across certain verticals, you could lose hundreds of billions of dollars in internet native market cap because it makes some of these companies' experiences unusable. So there's a strong incentive for these companies to work together to onboard Worldcoin. The other thing is A16Z. So they're an investor in Worldcoin. They're an investor in most of the important companies in the Valley, everywhere from infrastructure to apps. If you know, they very famously, I think it was, they put their thumb on the scales of a few Silicon Valley Bank to start banking crypto companies, and that's how the first crypto companies got banked in the U.S. was because they were a portfolio company or they had an extensive relationship. You see that in the Valley. If you know who the common investors are, you can kind of guess first customers. And who has more pull than them? They're launching these absolute mega funds. So you have different forces coming from different directions to incentivize, the use of Worldcoin within these applications, and I think it's really fun.
There is a flurry of rodents attacking Ryan Connor at the moment. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. You sent me a Mark Andreessen podcast the other day that talked about the mega funds and kind of like their view of the world, which is pretty interesting and ties directly into this. And I think it's pretty hard to ignore that in the context of like OpenAI and Worldcoin and the overlap between the two.
AlgoKit 3.0 includes all the tools and open source resources you need to unleash the power and performance of the Algorand blockchain. Access a resilient network with instant finality, consistently high throughput and low fees, and layer 1 features like atomic swaps and native assets. No smart contracts required. Whether you're building DeFi protocols, enterprise solutions, or next-gen dApps, AlgoKit has all the tools you'll need to build faster, safer, and smarter. Start building with AlgoKit today by following the link in today's show notes. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research.
I don't know, man. VO3 is also cracked. I'm kind of changing the subject here, but our head of creative, Reed Hannaford, just put together a pretty cool ad for Permissionless in like 2 hours using VO3. And it was pretty fun to kind of give him some ideas for like crypto native slang that we use in the industry to help build this out. And it was cool. It's just like incredibly obvious that you need to be adapting and evolving or you die.
Yeah.
We live in a very strange era, and that's like the only thing that I think you need to be reminding yourself.
Yeah.
I like VO3, and I've been trying to play with it actually for this pod to like make some animations and things like that. And they recently, I don't know if this is for every user or for some users, but they rate limited to 3 generations per day, and that has me absolutely raging because I'm trying to frickin' get this model to do what I want. But yeah, the video from Reed was sick. I think it only generates like short clips, so I'm assuming he really had to like piece together a ton of clips there. But
Yeah,
either
you should
way,
read his
sick what it can
thread.
do.
You should read his thread. I'll put it in the chat here. It was just really cool to hear it from his perspective as somebody who's been a director their whole lives and like takes that design and creative side of things incredibly seriously. Because you hear a lot of pushback from that community as a whole. You know, people are. I think every career should be scared to some regard, but I think the creative world has had some harsh reactions. If you remember, like the Studio Ghibli phase we had, right, the actual creator of that design was incredibly offended because people were just like mass reproducing his work. So yeah, Reed had a really cool perspective on it. I'm really glad he shared that with the world. I'm going to throw it in the chat right quick.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway there was something like along the lines of, you know, it's a sick tool. Like you can really spit out some cool stuff pretty quickly, especially if you've given the right prompts. And maybe you even need to like prompts to get your prompts to be good prompts for the video prompts. It's a lot of prompting, but either way, you know, some of his big takeaways were like, you know, it's not going to be necessarily perfect, especially if you have that design view of like really what you want something to look like. But, you know, you can very quickly get, you know, good ideas and models like turn to life, and then with additional editing flair, like, you know, really make something interesting out of that. So it can turn a ton of work into far less work, especially if you don't need to be absolutely 100% precise with all the details, which is awesome. And I imagine that's just going to get better.
Yeah, if you hear Sam Altman talk about how, like, you know, he's like, you all hate model names. Yeah, so do we. Like, their goal is to make it so you don't even see the models. And based on the question you ask, it kind of solves that problem behind the scenes without you having to actually choose that. So I think that, you know, right now we talk about how important it is to be like a prompt engineer. And I think it's like their goal to kill that being important to ever.
For what it's worth, I always use the top model for whatever I have to use. So now I have to wait like 7 minutes because O3 Pro takes so fucking long.
I have thoughts, but I'm not going to share them.
No, I mean, Dan, your point that it's only going to get better, that's the thing, and that's why this is so urgent. Like, we know it's going to get better in the same way that we knew that semiconductors were going to get better. Like, folks who were working on semiconductors in the 60s, they understood Moore's Law, or 70s. They understood Moore's Law so they could do the math and know where things were going. You know, Netflix, they started selling DVDs knowing that bandwidth was going to get to streaming was going to make sense. Scaling laws is increase the data 10x, increase the compute 10x. We get 2x improvement in performance. It's whole day. So we know how to, and it's getting actually more efficient over time. So we know where this is going. And that's why things like Worldcoin are going to be so important. Like, just think of the dating apps. The dating apps lose all their market cap if people go on there and they can't, and they lose trust in what they're getting on the other side. You know, it's tens of billions of dollars.
Worldcoin dating app. That sounds like
My worst
man,
nightmare.
you got to scan your eyeballs like to avoid the bots.
But imagine you're a single person and you use those dating apps, and all of a sudden they don't work for you anymore, and you don't know which one to trust.
You get
Imagine
fished by
you're
an
the CEO of
AI.
those apps. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's already the case, no? Like
true.
any of the metrics that you see posted online from, you know, below average individuals in society are just like, yep, I have, you know, 9 million right swipes and I get like one match and then it's a ghost.
Dog, I can't believe you said below average human beings.
I mean, it's just the truth of what like this era is, where like, you know, when everyone can see all the options available to them, they want the really highly valuable ones. And so then all of the less valuable, like they get lumped into this bucket of like, you know, not wanteds or whatever you want to call it. But that's just like what has happened to the online dating experience.
But but no doubt that there are some problems. I don't know how the stocks are doing, but I think it's important to consider that, the dating apps, they aren't necessarily for dating. They're more for swiping and playing that game. But if you lose confidence in the end of the game, which is like to actually get the possibility of a real world experience, if it's so diminished that you don't think that there are any humans on there, that you might never talk to one, you might totally churn from the app. Same thing with Reddit. There are companies that are actually expending resources to do their marketing solely through guerrilla marketing via LLMs on Reddit, to do like, restaurant reviews, like local restaurants.
We lost him.
Storm
took him out.
I will continue Ryan's point. I think he was going to say they're doing it through Reddit, and LLMs will probably die soon because of that, and we're all going to start touching grass, is what I expect he was going to say.
No.
He's
Hey,
back.
Ryan.
You want to continue your thought? Bach tried to finish it.
Where did I get lost?
They're using Reddit, LLMs on Reddit.
So companies are not spending money on Instagram, or they're opting to not spend money on Instagram ads in your feed, and they're opting to pay devs to spin up.
I'm kicking this dude because this is too much. All right. I hope he doesn't fire me for that, but let's talk about coins. Is that okay?
I'm in.
Yeah, a little trench talk.
A little bit of trench talk. Is anybody finding anything particularly interesting that I should be buying right now? My portfolio is constructed of Hyperliquid and BTC, so I'm looking for tokens.
Did you buy any Circle?
No, I didn't. I don't buy all of these.
David was shilling drink on the chat. I think we can.
I can't buy David's tokens. They're permanently cursed.
I will say we just lost Ryan Connor. I want to share a hilarious quote from him the other day where he said, "Are the trenches back, or am I just insane right now?" Because he's hit some runners in the meme coin trenches. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Are the trenches back right now? Do you think so?
I don't know. The thing is that anytime you're like, it's bad, somebody will be like, well, I just hit a 30x. So you can't really have it, which is the Ryan Connor case. I feel like they're not back. But it's very difficult to index to it because like the way that I'm thinking about it is November, December, January, where everything went up and like it felt like the lower ceiling was 20-30 mil for tokens, versus now I feel like things are topping way earlier. So to me, indexing back to that, I feel like they're not back. I'm sure that there are pockets where like you can outperform just because you're buying the right token at the right time, but I don't know if I would say we are fully back, because that feels like kind of disrespecting what we had before.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, from a activity standpoint around like volume and revenue for Pump Fund, it feels like they've been pretty consistent, right? I feel like the AMM obviously has accelerated their growth from their own view, but if you look at just the bonding curve, we've kind of been at this, it's called a homeostasis since late February. So it's like a 6-month period now where this has sort of been the new normal. So I wouldn't say they're not back, right? I mean, the numbers don't support them being at a new high or new low, really. But we've mostly just been in this new normal, where we're kind of just chilling around that 10 million in weekly revenue. So yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely hit runners in this environment. And when you do hit a runner, you do feel like the second coming of Christ. So I guess that's kind of in line with Ryan Connor's, remarks. Same, we've been flat on like tokens launched, tokens graduates in the same neighborhood. Interestingly, actually, token graduated up from that same like homeostasis period, but I mean, not much. And I guess this is probably the ultimate.
The market cap one, I think, is the interesting one here.
Yeah,
like
this is my. If
tokens
I
are doing.
could pick one KPI of like a launch pad, to me, it's this one. The amount of revenue can vary based on your your fee structure. The amount of volume can differ based on if you have an AMM after the bonding curve, etc. But the amount of value from the tokens that you've launched is ultimately kind of like the competing number. So yeah, I think this is also good evidence. And then looking back to that period we've kind of been looking at, so early February, we're slightly elevated from that. It looks like, interestingly, volume held up around this period from between February and April, but market cap bled pretty significantly. But yeah, you can see we're kind of back at somewhere around the 5 bill mark, short of an all-time high, just under 12.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Ryan is just hitting some winners right now. He's, maybe he's just in tune with the trenches at the moment. That's the vibe I'm getting, and I think I like that chart that we have as well, Dan, with number of tokens at X market cap or above X market cap, and then it's like broken out right next. Just go back up, the one that was right next to the one you were looking at, and then if you zoom that one out as well, it's like you can see a similar trend there, where it's like, there's still activity, of course, like people are trading, tokens are doing things, but yeah, I mean, I think Bach had a point that like the market caps that tokens are running to are certainly, distinctly lower than they were back in Q4, Q1. But there has been like an uptick in the past, 2 months, right?
Do we have any stats on like Pump live streams and how they've been doing?
Yeah, it's the burning question. I don't think there's anything on chain that signifies if a token is related to a live stream or not. So we'll probably have to work with the team to try to get that actual data. I'm gonna probably test that later today. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm not gonna actually live stream. I'm literally just testing. Maybe I'm not doing it anymore. But I don't think there's anything on chain, so we'd have to work with the team to get that data. But I mean, that's an awesome question.
Yeah, I think, and I will say, like, obviously Pump, they have their own front end for it, but Axiom as well, they have a segmented like UI like tab on their app that is specifically a live stream token. So yeah, I'm sure they have some way of categorizing them based on the data.
But yeah, I guess I was kind of just using actually, I mean, we can do this. I was kind of using Pump as the proxy for sort of all activity, but I mean, I think it generally is. I mean, the issue
I will
is fucking
say anecdotally, like, I don't have stats on like the number of coins, but I've been watching just like the top live stream tokens, and there's not been anything crazy going on there outside of like the few personalities who have spun up tokens. So like the Gainsey stream coin has been anywhere from like a few million to like 10 million market cap. Rasmer just did a coin and live stream on Pump Fun, and it similarly like went to 10 million, but I think is in the few million range. So it seems like these creators that are relatively well known in the space, like they're hitting interesting market caps, and then there's a lot of just like, I think you would probably call it slop content, to be quite honest, in terms of live streaming, where maybe it's just like an AI thing that's like an AI radio or like just music playing on loop, this type of stuff. But yeah, we should get Dan, you guys, get Sharples on it. We need to get some data on the live stream coins. That'd be great to break out.
Do you guys know what's going on with PancakeSwap? Like, I'm just checking the DEX spot volume dashboard, and they're doing like over 50% of all DEX volumes on chain.
Yes, we do. It's the Binance is doing an alpha program where they're paying for, like, they're incentivizing the volume side of the trade. So usually you see like the liquidity incentivized, but this one is like you get points which turn to dollars for every dollar of trade volume you execute. And so they're running that on PancakeSwap on BNB chain. So yeah, you can see the outsized impact BNB and PancakeSwap have in like all of the data right now. It's very annoying. I'm not happy with them for this. It ruins all the charts. Even like, I mean, you could debate about whether or not that should be filtered out, but like it's fee paying volume at the end of the day. Maybe we can put like an incentive toggle on there if there's like a known program running on a pool. That'd be pretty interesting actually. But yeah, TLDR, Binance Alpha program is running an incentives program, and specifically incentivizing the volume, which is unique.
With BNB token.
I don't know actually what they end up paying you in. It's a great question. It's very hard to find any information on this. I found like one Binance forum post that kind of like laid out the, I'll try to find the tweet of like how they were structuring it.
Incentive token transparency. Incentive program transparency.
Yes, we need another initiative.
Yeah, do you think categorizing like the tokens with the incentives would be really interesting, and then have that as a category on the chart and see like what portion of the total volume is coming from those pools? Because I'm just going to pull up Dex Screener here real quick as an example, but like you can see Bedrock, this token has done nearly 3 billion in volume on 16 million liquidity on this pool at a $10 million market cap. So
what's
like
it paired with?
This in this case USDT.
Okay, so
It's
that's
not
kind of
Coj.
rare.
It's
Is
not a
that-
Coj one, but like
that
previously
Coj
the ZKJ
ZK
Coj pool or pair was the top traded coin, but I'm assuming this Bedrock token has the like current best campaign, or maybe it's the only active campaign currently. I know there's like it's been a variety of coins, and they've kind of been like going through different periods where they're active, but yeah, I mean this pool's 4 days old, and it's doing 3 billion in volume in the past 24 hours. So at a $10 million market cap, like that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, you can see the very obvious impact that it's having on the trading here.
Yeah, I mean, but as Dan says, it's fee paying, because like I'm looking at our app compare tab, and then over the past 7 days, the only projects that have done more revenue than PancakeSwap are Hyperliquid and Solana. Like PancakeSwap is third across all projects in revenue, which is crazy.
That is crazy. What's the multiple that it's trading at over that time frame?
Over
4.
7 days.
2 to 4.
Right, so it's
One-
like a 2
1
per
to
type
4
multiple.
times.
So I mean, you can kind of see the market.
It's one.
One exactly. I think you can see the market kind of discounting the quality of that revenue as well in real time. Because yeah, I found that tweet. So they're giving you points. Again, you get $2 of volume gets you 1 point, and then it scales up from there. So $4 of volume gets you 2 points, $8, 3 points, 16, 4, 32, 5, and so on. It's unclear to me what exactly these points get redeemed into, but clearly there's demand for the points.
Man, that's a great design for the most volume possible. It's hilarious. Let's do a logarithmic curve for points farming. Yeah, I mean, and naturally, like I think if you look back on PancakeSwap's trading volumes, like, I mean, they've done more than a 10x or so in like total volume that they were trading on a daily basis from before to now that these campaigns are active. I would imagine that sure, while they're earning some revenues from this, I don't think their revenues 10x. Like these still must be lower fee pools than they otherwise would have been, because
a lot of them are 1 bip.
Yeah, nobody would shove $1 billion through a pool if they were paying some 0.25% fee on the volume.
Indeed. That ZKJ Coj pool was indeed 1 bip, doing like 4 billion in daily volume.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure whatever like the math on the trading campaign is, like, whoever's doing the trading here, like there's the design is very clear, so you can do out the math and see like up to what amount of volume makes sense to trade, and then just exactly trade that amount of volume for the points, and those points will convert into dollars for you, or whatever they get converted into, if it's BNB or USDT or what have you. So I think we're just seeing the natural outcome of that, where this will continue to play as long as they keep those incentives rolling. Something I want to ask about that is maybe slightly related but different is we're seeing that X is also now maybe getting into trading on platform, investing and trading, they mentioned. So maybe that includes like buying stocks, but maybe also like trading crypto or other things on the platform. Kind of, I think this has been an idea for a long time for a lot of social media platforms. Like they want to get all of this, like the entire universe of what their users kind of do on their phone, like all onto their platform. And obviously investing and trading, like that's a very valuable piece, just given that you can take, spread and trading fees. And we've seen how profitable that has been for, the pump funds and the trading bots and the wallets of the world. I'm curious if you guys have any like strong thoughts about this. Like, to me, it just feels like another, like Telegram has Onchain, but in my opinion, there's like really that's not really like that well integrated today. And, trading bots, for example, that use Telegram as like their backend for their app, they make all the money and Ton doesn't get that today. I don't know how X may go about this differently. Force it all on platform and, connect with market makers and exchanges to kind of run it themselves. What are we thinking about this?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think that, messaging for most people on planet Earth is not really a natural place for financial activity. And in fact, people do not want financial activity within their messaging application, at least historically. I think that it happened for very path dependent reasons for WeChat. And I think there are obvious reasons why it didn't happen elsewhere. The other problem with Telegram, I do like the Telegram story, but there are obviously risks to it, and the biggest one is that they don't really have the wealthiest markets. Telegram is most popular in places with GDP that are it's far less than Western Europe and the United States. But that's the opposite for X. X has a very US centric, very Western and wealthy audience. It's a little more highbrow. A lot of it's a place where like kind of more intellectual, like or knowledge based industries tend to have their social conversation, and I think that's a much more obvious place to launch financial products than in-app messaging.
How credible do you think it actually is that they are planning on building this? Because I remember 2021, they were speaking about like adding Bitcoin and ETH addresses like to profiles and being able to tip in that. I mean, they could just be like saying stuff and not actually doing it.
I heard last summer that ex-employees were working on it. I think it was like an open secret that ex-employees were perhaps working on it, and who knows? Like I feel like there are at big companies, there's always someone working on everything. But you just look to Elon's past, and Elon has said for 2 decades, and this was his plan with PayPal, that he wanted to make a super app, with payments and social, and he's talked about it recently, and it hasn't left. And I think it's like the natural progression. If you had markets where that weren't burdened by regulation and political considerations, like if you remember, like 20 years ago, like Walmart tried to get into finance and they couldn't because regulators stopped them. You had Meta, who tried to do a payments app because they had the user base, but again, regulators stopped them. It's a very natural place to kind of launch financial products if you have a big audience, and the primary thing stopping these companies from doing that has been just like overzealous regulators. And perhaps this is the moment that we have in the United States where we don't have that, and they can actually execute on these things. And it's going to be, frankly, it's going to be easier than ever because stablecoins are very internet native, whereas in the past it was much harder because you didn't have these internet native financial products. But how credible is it? I'm sure someone's working on it, but how seriously are they being taken? I don't know. Elon's serious though. It's just a matter of when, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. We also recently saw the Polymarket and X integration or partnership, whatever it may be. And I think that's a pretty interesting way to think about how they're viewing it, right? Like they have the distribution, and if you have the distribution, you can partner with the product, and you take a cut of flow. I think the monetization path there is pretty straightforward and favorable for the player that has the distribution as well. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see where it goes, but I'm definitely bullish on the idea. I don't know. To your point about not wanting everything in the same spot, I kind of feel that way. But I'm here to experiment, so I'm down. And if I could we've said this a lot about podcasts recently, but it feels like if you have a debate podcast, there should be some sort of live market on the winner of the debate. Then if you could do that all directly within X, it would be very cool. So I think there's cool ideas like that are more so in this new direction rather than just like, yeah, I can like double tap my power button and pull up my X Pay. Like, I don't know. That doesn't really get me that excited, but versus thinking about content in a new way.
Yeah, and I do wonder how focused they are on like even their live content, for example. It's quite limited, I would say, relative to other live streaming platforms in terms of like audience interaction with the stream, and maybe that's fine, but it seems like if you added in some more of this like on platform payments and trading and other things, like there would be an opportunity there for like greater integration of like, now users and followers of different, these different personalities or streaming or live streaming like groups or pages could, then interact with them directly, or, you hook in, topics being talked about and the assets being traded into that sort of conversation. Similar to what you're talking about with Polymarket there, Dan, but I like the point about distribution. The finance and like crypto communities on here, certainly like there's just a ton of discussion about the assets that they're thinking about buying, that they are selling, the options that they want to trade, and then like obviously all of that activity happens elsewhere. So it does feel somewhat natural that there might be an opportunity to like get a piece of that and just pull it on the platform, because this is where a lot of that discovery and conversation is happening for a ton of users, clearly.
This also taps into like the super app kind of framework, like you see more common in Asian markets where you have like kind of one super app for everything. I just feel like in the US and Europe and the West in general, it hasn't been the case where you have like everything just in one place. But yeah, I don't know. I'm skeptical that it will work, but it's an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah, I think in the US, the iPhone is the super app. It's going to be hard to break that. That's going to be, but you can bundle some products for sure. They have the distribution to do so. But it's actually kind of odd, like to watch Grok kind of flounder, right? Like maybe that's a test. I'm not using Grok and it's not because I don't want to. I think it's a good model. I just forget to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like separated from the product experience, right? I feel like trying to integrate it like into the, when you see a tweet, there's like the Grok button and it can like, do some of that for. I feel like they just need to take away some of the user choice in the matter and just like more, focus more heavily on like from a product standpoint, how is it integrated and making the like user experience better.
It's interesting. I see a lot of tweets responding to, or a lot of replies where it's like, "Hey, Grok, is this true?" Maybe that's the form factor where it's like, "Hey, Grok agent, Grok finance agent, like 2x long Apple, based on this tweet or something."
I will say though, like we've tried that a lot. Like, I mean, there've been many attempts like within crypto where obviously the focus is generally all trading at the moment with, these protocols and bots that, you can set up in your Discord that exist on Twitter and all these other places where, you can add them and then go long a token. But it seems like it's an idea that's, people get behind it and then it fizzles out 2 weeks later. Like it just isn't, there's not something like interesting enough to keep it going. I don't know. Maybe that just needs to hit a critical mass, but to me, it still feels like this is going to sound insane, but like it feels like too much work to have to write out a tweet to say, "Hey, at thing, go buy this for me," then just like open the app and hit the buy button. And maybe that will change, but I do think there is something to this concept of like giving a user like endless choice versus just like giving them a button to push.
It's an interesting point. But it makes me feel the opposite. Like, how many times do you see like the GOR token that kind of ripped based on this Tolly and someone else chatting about I don't know, blockchain design stuff. If I could reply to that tweet really fast in app as opposed to having to switch apps,
I agree with that point, but maybe
like
it's
buy
more.
this contract address when you
It should
see
be
it.
better. It should be even better, right? I shouldn't even have to reply. Like Grok should see it.
Your Neuralink should.
It should do it. Like it should know. Okay, and then this is the CA, and then it makes the button and it says buy, and you just press it. Like I think they need to abstract all of that and just put the button there for you, and that
then,
is like the winning product.
And then you log into X with Neuralink, and then you don't even have to click buy or sell. It's just you just think.
You just see their feed in front of you with augmented reality through your Neuralink.
See where this is going. This is nuts.
Wally is next.
Where'd Bach go?
I don't know. He got
He had to
scared
hop.
of you.
Yeah, he was scared of you.
No, I agree with your points about Grok, though. I don't use the in-app Grok. I think it's trash. I don't know why it's so bad, but it's horrible. It doesn't know anything about Twitter, and that kind of is like why I'd want to use it. I've downloaded their secondary app, and it's pretty good. But I don't know. I'm just kind of like a 03 guy, so that's my go-to.
Yeah.
This is what I thought of with the Neuralink idea. See action.
Totally.
What else we got?
I got one more thing that maybe we can talk about. It's interesting because it's a little. We talked earlier about making chains, centralized exchanges or crypto companies making their own chains to come on chain. And then now we're seeing that trend where, maybe they're just making products on pre-existing chains, just getting right to the user. Let me pull the monkey off the screen. But we do still see and obviously this was already in motion, but Ink, for example, Kraken's Ink, they have announced the Ink token is coming. I don't know that much is really happening on Ink today, but I do think it presents like this kind of interesting crossroads that we're at as an industry right now, where you see teams like Bybit and OKX, like we talked about. They're just going out, they're building products, they're building wallet, they're building a DEX. They're getting right on chain where the users are, and then you kind of see this continuation of this idea of we need to do what Coinbase and Base did. Let's launch a chain. Let's build an ecosystem there. Let's get a token out. I don't know. I don't have super high expectations for Ink, mostly because I don't really think anything is happening there. I mean, we could pull up the numbers, but I don't think that they would get many of us excited today. I don't know. Is there a big takeaway here? Is this just get the token out? Why not?
Yeah.
I think
you go.
Go for it, Dan.
No, you go.
I like Kraken. I haven't used it, but I increasingly meet people who are using it and who really like the product, and you can see that something's changed there. I think for years they were behind, and they really accelerated listings velocity, and they've partnered with I think the right chains and are not being so ideological, which I heard internally they were. So I think if there's a sleeper that you want to bet on, I'm not saying that this is what Blockworks research feels about Ink, but Kraken's doing a lot of the right things. So,
yeah, I don't know. They've building a chain is really hard, and getting activity on your chain is very hard. We've seen a lot of chains that are at that 2-3 year mark, and there's still essentially nothing happening on them. I think it's going to be increasingly hard to do that. But I think Ink has the power of Kraken behind it, and we saw how well that worked for Coinbase and Base, right? And so if you can iterate on that playbook and figure out a few key optimizations to make, then they have every reason to be successful. I hope they didn't just launch the token to have an incentive tool. I think that's just like a sad and depressing end state if that's the case, but it's certainly possible. But I think net, it's interesting, right? Because they're in the Optimism Collective. And so the super chain, or the Optimism Collective governs the super chain, which Inc is a part of. So the token actually doesn't have governance rights over the chain itself, which is kind of interesting. We never really hit this problem because Base didn't launch a token. Maybe problem's not even the right way to be phrasing it, just like interesting thing we've yet to see before. But like tokens like Mode or chains like Mode have a token as well. And I mean, Mode's maybe a bad example because it didn't really work out to see too much activity happening over there. Or even Uniswap, and that doesn't govern the Uniswap Uni chain, but presumably it's going to have a role once the UVN goes live. So it's just kind of interesting to think about, if there is no governance rights, then what is the role of the token? If it doesn't have a governance rights value accrual, like it feels like an incentive token, and that's definitely something to be wary of in this case, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like, I think tokens are incredibly powerful for distribution. Like, think about like a Solana Seeker and the Seeker token. I think like Seeker in that case is just like a distribution tool to get people to buy the phone. I think the same thing here. I think like the Inc token is just bringing attention to like the Inc chain. I don't think a lot of people are using it now, and like they can showcase like the products that the chain has via Inc incentives, or like embedding it in like the native lending markets or native DEXs of the chain. So I think it's just like a distribution tool. Like, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. But I think undoubtedly you'll see more people use Inc because of the token than without it.
Yeah, maybe I'm changing my tune a little bit after thinking about it a bit more, because I think to Ryan's point, like we've really seen Kranken amp up some of their efforts. At least it seems that way, just based on recent announcements. And we know where they're going after tokenized equities on chain, for example, with backed on Solana. But then obviously also there's Inc as an L2 on ETH, and like I don't know, maybe this is just like they're putting out a bunch of like tendrils, and like we're just gonna see what sticks, where we find traction. And clearly seeing like Coinbase and Base has been like relatively a success for them. So maybe there's an idea to kind of replicate that strategy a little bit. And Coinbase is, or not Coinbase, Binance is doing this a little bit as well with BNB chain. So maybe they just see the opportunity there to put some of the assets on chain, issue some of their own assets, put them on that chain, like do some integrations with the exchange, but then also explore other products. Maybe I was a little too bearish to start. It might just be another interesting experiment for them, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
The other important context is that Coinbase isn't firing on all cylinders, right? Which helps.
I will say though, like for a while it looked like for Kranken was kind of maybe getting ahead of the game with some of these like product expansions that we would expect, or announcements that we would have expected from Coinbase. But we did just see Coinbase also recently mentioned wanting to do equities on chain. I think they're in maybe some initial talks with the SEC to like get that approved, perhaps, or like define what that looks like for like US customers, or maybe customers abroad, or maybe both. I'm not sure. But like we've seen,
plus Shopify payments, plus JP Morgan. I'd push back a little bit on not firing on all cylinders. I think they're a big corp and they get a lot of shit for moving slow, but I don't know. They've had some big wins lately. JP Morgan, Shopify, and
some big announcements.
Equities on chain. Yeah, true.
But I think we're working on announcements for all of these teams, right? So it's like we need to see what gets delivered. But
true. And I'm the first person to tell you that velocity is all that matters when it comes to getting assets on chain. And JP Morgan's JPMD is not going to have huge velocity. But I think this is a rare exception where the sticker actually means a lot, right? If you have JP Morgan's involvement in your environment, I think that's actually a meaningful win versus some, community or regional bank doing the same thing. It's like, yeah, that's really cool, but how much does that mean? Right, these assets won't have high velocity because they're going to have transfer restrictions, and they're mostly just being parked on the chain.
Yeah, I think that's fair. At the very I'm going to give Coinbase some credit here, at least. Like, I think stuff like the Morpho integration with the exchange, we haven't seen. I want to see more from like they teased the idea around permission pools with UniV4 hooks, but I don't think that's gotten anywhere yet. Maybe that
they released the aerodrome integration though recently. So now you can like trade aerodrome pools like through the Coinbase app, which I think it's an interesting integration. Like they have like Morpho integration, like money markets. Now they have the aerodrome integration, like DEXs. So I think they're moving like in the right direction in that sense.
Yeah, my expectation is for that to just like eventually encompass everything. You know, CEX and DEX things from like this app. Don't call it a super app, but
No, yeah, I mean, I think you're
that's the
completely
vision.
right. Like, why would you not, as a centralized exchange, have a DEX aggregator like offering? Forget about figuring out the liquidity. Just use what's on chain today and just route trades. Yeah, I think you'll definitely see that. And things like DFlow on Solana are kind of like optimized for that. Like you have known retail flow coming from the Coinbase app, then you can quote that at tighter spreads. So I think you're going to probably see that route get taken, which I'm not totally sure what their announcement was the other day related to being able to, automatically trade any asset trading on Base through the Coinbase app. I imagine it's something to the effect of a DEX aggregator. Like in my head, that's kind of like what the construction would look like, but I could see that going a couple different ways.
Cool. All right. Well, we've been live for a good bit here, gentlemen. I think we can call it. Before we close out, though, permissionless next week. I don't know if anyone's going to buy any tickets at this point, but if you are coming, I think we'll be excited to see you there in Brooklyn, 24th through the 26th. I think, is everyone here giving a talk or on a panel? I would imagine the answer is yes to that.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
You can come out, listen to the Reverend. What are you going to be talking about, Reverend Smith?
I think I'm doing a panel, and then me, Ryan, and Felipe are jamming on all things token transparency. Maybe we have another cohort live by then. That's probably a little bit ambitious, but we're working on that aggressively, and we'd love to have more data points to talk about.
Yeah. Love it.
I'm moderating a panel on MEV with folks from Jito, DFlow. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Brian, anything beyond what Dan said? I know we'll be doing some pod recordings, and I believe you'll be on some of those. I don't know what else you'll be doing there, though.
No, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so behind. No clue.
We've
Thank
been on
you for the reminder, Dan.
a 3-week sprint here to get this thing out the door. So
Ryan's just going to be there. It's all
I'll
vibes
be
for
there.
him. He'll be selling. He's always selling.
I'll be there. I'll be at the booth. I think we have a good location. It's going to be awesome. Industry City's great. It's going to be fun.
We'll get him in the dunk tank, and I'll be there. I'll be doing a panel. I'll be doing some pods with, your guys' favorite Boccaccio, and I think probably Ryan, and we've got some good guests lined up. I think I'd have to double check. I think maybe we got John Sharp, maybe we've got Felipe coming on, some of those, but then I'll be doing a panel on next gen consumer apps. We'll have Sal from Bullpen. We'll have Pat Kim from Narrative, and Vishal from True Markets. So that should be a fun one as well.
Very nice.
Tune in if you love consumer. All right. I think we can call it there, gents. I want everyone to have a great weekend. Go get some sun, touch some grass, do whatever. Go have a pint at the pub with your mates, and then get fueled up, and we'll see you next week in New York.
We'll see you next week. Amen.